Well, hey there team, welcome back to the channel and welcome to my overview of I Am Future Cozy Apocalypse Survival. What a mouthful. So for those not across it, I do overviews on this channel. It's where I have a look at the first 2 hours of a game. That's a Steam refund window. Steam says you can make up your mind about whether you want to keep a game or not in that time, and broadly speaking I would agree, and as a rule, say 20 hours in, you're probably not going to change your mind about how you felt 2 hours in. So it's a short punchy video, broad strokes info, keep it around 10 minutes, and then you can make up your mind on your own. Okay, so this has gone 1.0. Kind of just snuck out, which is a pleasant surprise. I did play a little bit of this in early access. I'd never made it onto the channel. Couldn't remember why, because I remember this being a cool game. Playing through it though, I think maybe why I didn't put it up. There's a glaring problem. However, it's not enough to take away from the fact this is actually a really fun game and I want to play more of it. But I will just lead with the fact that the writing in this is so incredibly, insufferably cringe in that it's trying at 150% effort to be funny, and it's just non-stop. And I'm not saying like dad jokes, I'm saying like back and forth jokes between your main character and this like fridge helper thing. And they will go back and forth through about 10 levels of sparring, talking about, well, you know, maybe you were a fridge in a past life. And it's frigging terrible writing. But it's not a deal breaker, not at all, because I just skip through that. I have no time for this fridge. So whenever he talks to me, I spam the skip button and then I'll probably end up with an objective. So I don't really know what's going on, but it's also pretty flimsy anyway. You've woken up out of a cryopod, you don't know what's going on. Your dude's very can-do attitude, which is refreshing, but like I said, trying too hard to be cringe, terrible humor. But that's pretty much it. You've been cryo-asleep, you've woken up, the world's had an apocalypse, gotta work it out. And the gameplay loop is 10 out of 10. It's really solid fun. Effectively, it does fit into that kind of busy work simulator game. Tiny Build's publishing this, but other games in that space that I've enjoyed are things like Graveyard Keeper. I really love that. It's gotta be one of my favorite games ever. And this sits closer to that than something like Stardew Valley. I almost didn't boot this up, to be honest, because it has cozy in the name. I kind of dislike that term, and it turns me off a lot of games because it's more about correlation in that a lot of this stuff has romantic dating simulator shit jammed in, and it's co-opting the genre. I don't mind something that's a little bit more meandering as far as like survival mechanics or death. Like in this, I think you could probably starve and lose health, right? There are some antagonistic elements, but it's very light. It's very much what I would think cozy is supposed to mean. But I do find all this insufferable dating everyone in the town thirst crap to just be, well, insufferable. So far, this doesn't seem to have any of it, being that you're the last man alive and you've just got to talk to your fridge. So actually cozy, which is fine. But so far, yeah, you start off on a rooftop, you go around pulling everything that you can apart, cutting down trees and bits and pieces into planks. And I've started building a few workspaces, campfires, that sort of stuff. I find that the craft from inventory, at least at the moment, is pretty bad. There seems to be crafting space specific inventory. So if I go to a workbench, it'll have 8 slots in it and I can manually put stuff in it and then it will craft from that. But that's not good enough in my opinion. I really do think if you're going to do one of these games and try and keep players on the right side, i.e. you're not creating mechanics to just fuck them around and elongate your gameplay loop and pad it. I really do think that you put a storage box over here, it's near your crafting station over there, I'm using my hands, but they're near each other. It should just be able to magnet out of storage. I feel like that's just a modern gameplay development that should be across everything. Now, maybe they've made it so that technology later on will unlock that or whatever, but I still hate that as well. That should just be out of the box functionality, much like clicking left click fires your gun in a first person shooter. But it's got like a day-night cycle, you've got health and you've got food. You can sleep, from what I understand, to get health back you sleep, but obviously that drains your food meter. There seems that there's probably going to be pretty stacked gardening focus. I've only built a few plots. But the whole scavenging through old dead tech for base elements is really well realized and interesting. There's a lot of like, you know, putting light bulbs and copper wiring and nails and all that together. So I enjoy that resource industry production line in these sort of games. You know, usually you'll see something like that in Factorio for building up factories or whatever, but I quite like when survival crafting gets into the nails and cogs and all that sort of stuff to build, like a tier 3 product to move the game forward. So this has got that worked out really well, and it's very satisfying. But like I said, there is a sort of inverse relationship, because the more complex you make all your building mats, and so I've got 50 different bits and bobs, and I'm starting to memorize where they go, but it is becoming an embuggerance that this inventory system, this storage craft system or lack thereof, is really starting to throw a spanner in the works. And again, not to go too circular, but what's there, i.e. slot stuff into the fireplace storage and craft from there, that's not good enough. No one wants that. And I suppose I dwell on points like that and get a little bit more enthusiastic, because that's usually where there's an intersect where I really like the game, because I really like what it's doing, and that's when glaring issues glare even brighter. I'm sure most can relate to that. If a game is just abject trash or doesn't interest you or what have you, I personally just move on. You might be the same. You don't ruminate on the negatives and lament that they're better. So yeah, it's got a couple of negatives in here which really hurt it, because it's such a really solid, cool game. But look, there's like a fishing mini game, and that works out quite well, and it's got its internal loop worked out. Like, just as an example, to give you an idea of the fidelity or lengths in which the game developers have gone to create a fun loop. You can fish with bait, but if you don't have bait, you can just fish for trash or whatever, but then you can reinvest. You can get clams from trash fishing, and you can turn them into bait to essentially get to tier 2 fishing in that moment. It's very clever. And I don't know if it's in trailers or whatever, but one of the cool gimmicks in this is that you can find fairly complex items, like a kettle, for example. I'll see if I can pull out the B-roll for that. But it goes into a little mini game where it pulls that item up, and you essentially pull it apart like something out of Car Mechanics Simulator. You undo all the screws and rip out the copper wiring and that, and that's how you properly sort of scrap this more complex mechanism. You can't use it, you can't repair it, but you can get all the bits out of it, and you have to go through the mini game to do it, and that's incredibly satisfying. Anyway, it's good. I've got lots of busy work to do. I've got different places to build. There's sort of gates, doorways that I need to open up with more complex technology and copper wiring and what have you, and it's good. It's pulling you in about 5 different directions, but it's not very stressful. Again, it does have that impetus of you have to eat so you don't die, but it's not super overbearing, but it is there to consider. I think all in all, mechanically, incredibly sound, solid, addicting, and fun. But again, writing, screamingly terrible, and I'm not a big fan of the inventory system with regards to crafting. Anyway, be informed. I would still say check it out, and it is one of those things I can reconcile both those negatives. Even though they give me the shits and they take away from what looks like a really cool game, personally, I still want to play more of this. Negatives be stuffed. Anyway, make up your own mind, team. Might just leave it there for the time being, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.